gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Tribe by Noire and welcome to 2018. I hope you guys are killing it and doing great in your goals. But I want to give you guys some very useful and important information here, right? Because I get a lot of questions about people asking me how to build their physique and, you know, what muscles to work on, what type of program they should be doing. Should they be cutting? Should they be bulking? Should they be eating more or less or having more training days or less, and all of these type of things. So I'm going to simplify it, okay? And this is where I'm going to start for 2018. This is going to be the first video of 2018 that I do, okay? And that is going to be the 3 steps to creating a drastic change in your physique. The 3 steps to building your ideal physique. Step 1, 2, and 3. Very simple, okay? And this makes the difference between it taking you 3 to 4 or even 5 years to build your ideal physique, or it taking 1 to 2 years, really depending on what you want to build, right? And the reason why this is so important is because there's so many different things to do. People do spin classes and Zumba, people do all types of cardio, people do powerlifting, bodybuilding, bro splits and all type of stuff, full body workouts, whatever, right? There's a lot of different things to do. And we make things very complicated, but these 3 steps is gonna be the simplest way to build your ideal physique. This is just about physique building. All right, so step 1 is going to be a cutting phase. Now, when I say cutting phase, I don't mean cutting in the traditional sense that most people think of, which is just cutting weight overall. The goal is to cut body fat, not necessarily to cut weight, but to cut body fat specifically. This is all about body recomposition. That's what I always advocate for, okay? And the reason for that is because you can drop a lot of weight and not really lose a lot of body fat, not really look too great after all the weight loss. And you can drop a lot of body fat and not really lose much weight, which is ideal, right? Because ultimately we want to have less fat. We don't want to be fat, right? We want to be lean, right? So it's all about dropping the body fat, not just weight in general, okay? And everything we should be doing is deliberate and specific, not vague building or vague losing overall. We want to be specific about what we want to build and specific about what we want to change and lose, right? So as far as men and women, now on average, let's say you're in between the ages of 25 and 30. As a man, your body fat percentage on average should be around 10%, and for women, it'll be around 20%. Now, in a cutting phase, a good goal is to get maybe 2 to 4% below the average. So that's gonna be like 8 to 6% for men, and for women, that's gonna be 18 to 16%, right? So dropping 4% below that average is a pretty good starting point for step 1, or at the end of step 1, right? And of course, if you're like 12, 14%, or 16% as a man, you should be cutting. Now, I know a lot of you guys, you want to start bulking and getting big, but the thing is the fact that don't start that bulking phase. You start eating big to get big, and then you start getting fat. And then, of course, ladies, you're a little bit smarter, so this may not be a thing that you'll do, where you'll get caught into this bulking craze, right? And so I made a video last year about cutting and bulking and why I advocate for neither, right? And the reason for that is because, now check this out. You do a traditional bulking phase. Let's say you're a guy, you're at 12%, and you're like, I want to pack on muscle. I want to go through a bulking phase. And so at the end of that bulking phase, well, at the beginning you started at, let's say, 12%. Then at the end of that phase, you're 14%. So let's say you've gained, I don't know, 4 pounds, or maybe you've even gained 6 pounds. That's a problem because you're really only going to gain a pound to a pound and a half of muscle a month. So if you, at the end of that month, if you gain 4 to 6 pounds, most of that is fat. And so if you keep doing that month after month, you're just gonna get fat. And then you gotta go and you gotta cut and lose all of this extra weight, right? And then during that cutting phase, it's very easy to lose muscle in the process, and then you end up losing a lot of the muscle you built in this cutting phase in the traditional sense. This is why I advocate to start with that cutting phase, that body recomposition phase, right? So you get to a nice lean starting point before you start building. This is why the cutting phase is step one. So let's get into the specifics of the cutting phase, what you should be doing in your training during the cutting phase. Now check this out. Don't make the mistake of getting in the gym and standing on Bosu balls and throwing medicine balls and doing battle rope drills and, jumping over tires and hopping over barbells and doing 5 minutes of burpees and all this type of stuff. It may be fun and exhausting and make you sweat, but here's the thing. Those type of things are not very effective at building muscle, okay? And the most effective way to drop body fat is to build muscle. So if you're in the gym trying to build your ideal physique, why are you doing things that don't really build muscle? Okay? If you're in the gym doing things that don't really build muscle, this is how you end up dropping a lot of weight and not really losing a whole lot of body fat. This ain't body recomposition. Okay? So you want to be on a hypertrophy style program. This is where you're going to really be working that muscle. You're going to be training to increase your muscle mass, your lean mass. All right? So how I like to go about this is it's going to be a pretty high volume program where you're doing like 16 and 20 reps and maybe even 30 and 50 reps depending on the exercise. Here's an example of what that type of workout may look like. Let's say it's a full body workout. Right, and you got 1 to 2 exercises per muscle group. So let's say you start off with training your back. Maybe you do barbell rows or some type of dumbbell rows mixed with either lat pull down or pull-ups. And you're doing 3 sets of each exercise, as many reps as possible. Right? So on those barbell rows, your first set, maybe you get up to 20 reps with a specific weight. You hit that 20 reps and you increase the weight by 10%. And then you get into your next set, you try to do as many reps as possible with that next weight. And then increase the weight by 10% again, right? And so the goal is you want to try to get as many reps as possible. So let's say set number 1 was 20 reps, set number 2 was 16 reps, set number 3 was maybe 12 or 13 reps. Then you move on to, let's say, training push muscles. So you do either push-ups or some type of dumbbell or barbell chest press. And you do the same thing. And then you do maybe overhead presses, same thing, 3 sets, right? And then you move on to lower body training. Maybe you do some type of stiff leg deadlift for 3 sets, as many reps as possible, and then some type of squat or squat variation or lunges, 3 sets, as many reps as possible. At the end of this workout, you're gonna document how many reps you did with each weight on each set. Next week, you're gonna use those same weights, but try to get more reps on each set. Or you can even increase the weight by 5 to 10% next week and get as many reps as you can. And this is a way of building strength also. So there's different ways to do it. You can keep the weight the same, focus on getting more reps, or you can increase the weight and focus on getting as many reps as you can. You can do that for 3 weeks and deload on the 4th week. It's just an example of how to do it. So you can either do an upper-lower split for 4 weeks like this, or you can do full body workouts for 4 weeks like this, right? 3 weeks ramping up and deload on the 4th week. That's just basically how you could do it, right? You can do 1 exercise each body part or each muscle group, or 2 or even 3 exercises each muscle group, depending on what your goals and preferences are. Now, the beauty of doing this is the fact that it's very cardiovascularly taxing, and it's also very taxing on the muscle. So this trains you to have more endurance cardiovascularly as well as muscularly. And this also increases your strength doing this. So you're getting the best of all worlds doing this. All right? And this is a really great way to build muscle and burn body fat at the same time. And this is how you drastically change your physique. This is how it starts. All right, so step number 2 is going to be a strength phase. Okay, you're going to be doing 3 things in this phase. Number 1 is going to be establishing a strength foundation, right? Understanding your relationship to strength, building a relationship with producing strength. Number 2 is going to be increasing your current level of strength, right? Gaining more strength. And then number 3 is going to be quantifying and calculating your strength capabilities, right? Establishing what we call a 1 rep max, or your 1 RM, right? So this type of training is going to revolve around big complex lifts, right? Using preferably barbells. And the reason why you'd use a barbell preferably for a strength phase is because a barbell has the most capability to load with weight, right? So that's why you would use a barbell for this phase. If you're not strong enough to really use barbells, well then you can use dumbbells, right? And then just keep working and building strength until you start using barbells. So those are the three things that you want to use. And the reason why this is so important to develop early on, right, is because you're going to need this information. You're going to need this experience in order to go through phase number 3. Now, before I get into phase number 3, we still got to talk about strength, right? Because we got to talk about, well, how do we go about this? How do I go about using this barbell and establishing this 1 rep max? Well, here we go. Now, the type of training you're going to do, I would advise training or strength training 3 to 4 days a week, right? And you're going to pick a handful of complex movements to revolve your training around. So that would be a barbell squat, that would be a barbell deadlift, that would be a barbell bench press, that would be a barbell row, right? So let's say 4 of these movements. You can do 3, or you can target 3 or 4 of these movements at a time and really focus on developing these movements. So example, let's say week 1, you're working with a rep range of, let's say, 3 to 4 sets of 8 reps, right? Week 2, you're working with 6 reps. And then week 3, you're working with 4 reps. Now, each week, you increase the weight you're using by 15%, right? So week 2 would be 15, all weights would be 15% heavier than week 1. And week 3, all weight would be 15% heavier than week 2, right? So that's an example there. And so a great way to progress your strength is, let's say you do 3 or 4 sets. And then on the last set, you try to do as many reps as you can with that weight, right? So that you're getting in the volume there. So let's say you chose a weight that you could do 8 reps with, but you ended up getting more than 8 reps. You were actually capable of doing more than 8 reps. You were capable of doing, let's say, 12 reps, right? That's good information to know, right? To know what you're capable of. Right? And so then you can go into the next week even more confident in your strength capabilities. Right? So that's just an example there, and that's also a way of getting in more volume, and that works towards building more muscle, right? So that's a way of doing that. I'm a big fan of flat sets, where you can work with the same amount of weight for each set. And that's where doing the last set as many reps as possible works pretty well. So let's say you chose a weight that you can do 8 reps with. You can stay with that weight and do as many reps as possible on either the last set or every set, and basically just try to beat the amount of reps that you did. Or every set you can increase the amount of weight that, you know, from set 1, 2, and 3 and 4 by 5 to 10%, right? So each set the weight gets heavier. You can do that also. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And then once again, you go through week 1, 2, and 3. 3 will be where you're lifting the most amount of weight and putting in the most amount of effort. And then week 4 would be like a deload week, where you cut your intensity by 30 to 50%. So that's just an example of how you can go through a strength phase, right? You have 1 to 2 primary exercises where you're really focusing on strength, and then you can have 1 to 2 or even 3 accessory exercises in order to facilitate the improvement on the strength lifts that you were doing. And then of course your core exercises and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's a template in a nutshell. All right, so for the 3rd and final step, this is going to be the mass phase, is what I like to call it, or a hypertrophy phase, right? And this is where you're just going to be focusing on building quality lean mass. Not really focused on trying to drop body fat or improve strength, just focusing on mass and really dialing in the physique here, right? So this is where you're going to be ramping back up the volume. Not exactly like the cutting phase, but maybe kind of similar. So typically in a hypertrophy style program, what it would look like would be, let's say, 4 weeks or so, where week 1 you work with 5 sets, 8 reps at 65% of your 1 rep max, right? You don't increase the weight or decrease the weight on each set. Flat sets, just 65% of your 1 rep max. So week 1 would be 5 by 8, week 2 would be 6 by 8, week 3 would be 7 by 8. That's just an example, right? Some people would start with six sets, whatever. It just depends on what level you're at in your fitness journey, right? And ideally what you'd want to be doing here is hitting each muscle group at least twice a week. You can hit certain muscle groups even 3 or 4 times a week. It really depends on what you want to work on the most. For example, I think that you should be hitting your back at least twice a week, or 3 to 4 times a week ideally, right? So that may be deadlifting once a week, rowing twice a week, and pull-ups or some type of vertical pull once a week, or even twice a week, right? It depends on how you can mix it up, right? But back, things like back and legs are muscle groups that you should be hitting 2 to 3 or even 4 times a week, right? It really depends on your goals there. But that's how it goes, right? So you can see with that 5 sets first week, 6 sets the second week, 7 sets the third week, and then deload on the 4th week. Now you see, week by week you can increase the sets, and this is a way of increasing the amount of reps that you do. This is a way of increasing your volume. Now, obviously with 65% of your 1 rep max, you ain't gonna be doing 30 reps, 20 reps, and all of this type of stuff. Even 16 reps, you're not really gonna be doing all of that there. So this is where you can lift a fairly decently, nice heavy amount of weight, moderately heavy, and you can really keep the focus there where you're not going too light, right? Because it's not really that efficient to work with really light weight to gain mass at an optimal rate. It doesn't really work. So this is why the strength phase is so important, because you can calculate what that 65% of your 1 rep max is. Now, if you didn't go through that strength phase, you wouldn't have that strength foundation. So you wouldn't know what's too light and what's too heavy. So now if you set the weight too light, then you don't really gain as much muscle as you could. If you set the weight too heavy, you give yourself a low ceiling, you burn out too quickly, and then you have to drop the weight down anyway, and you hack your program up that way. So here's a suggestion of mine. Here's how it would look. You can do weeks 1, 2, and 3 just either using a flat 5 by 8 each week. Well, then where's the progression, right? The progression is you can either do as many reps as possible on each set, or you can do as many reps as possible on the last set. I lean more towards doing as many reps as possible on the last set, right? So you guarantee yourself those 8 reps on sets 1 through 4, and then you go all out on set 5. Week 2, the goal is to beat the amount of reps that you did on the last set on the first week. So if you did 14 reps, right? Or no, let's say you did 12 reps week 1, last set. Week 2, go for 13 or 14. Week 3, go for 14 or 15. See? And there's your progressive overload. There's the progression. So if your max at 65% of your 1 rep max on week 1 was 12 reps, and now by week 3 you're doing 16 reps, you gain some strength. And more than likely you gain some muscle doing that too. And then of course you deload on the 4th week, taking off dropping down to 30 or dropping off 30 to 50% of the intensity, right? So that you can recover and build even more. So that's just an example of how to do that. As far as a training split, you can do full body splits, or you can do upper lower splits. Now for this type of training, I like to do upper lower splits where I start off with a lower body day, then the next day is an upper body day, then another lower body day, and then another upper body day, right? And I like to train around 4 times a week. I don't really train much more than that, right? Because that's pretty much, I've done pretty well with 4 days a week. So if you want to do 5, then you can. It's like an accessory day where you work like, I don't know, calves and traps or something like that. I don't know, right? Or maybe you do some conditioning stuff where you break out your battle ropes and your kettlebells and stuff like that and get a nice conditioning session in. Whatever you want to do, right? But there's a lot of ways to do this. And that is the steps 1, 2, and 3. Cutting, strength, and the mass phase. All right, so real quick, right? If you got a lot of value out of this, you really like this 3-step process, I want to tell you about a little something that I put together, right? Now, at tribebynoire.com, I have 6 months of training and diet protocols laid out step by step. So this system that I call Tribe Solid takes you through the cutting phase, the strength phase, and the mass phase, where you get 8 weeks of programming for each phase, and you get the diet protocols also that go right along with these phases. And then on top of that, I have a men's version and a women's version of each phase of this 3-step process. So if that's something that you want to get in on, I put a link in the description for you to sign up for that and actually start following that and working with me directly. Now, if you still need a little bit more information, you have some more questions, you're still confused about some things in this video, that's cool too. You can actually request a consultation, and I put a link to that in the description. So you can request that consultation and we can either talk on the phone or web chat, whichever works for you. So you can either request a consultation or sign up directly and get in on the platform and work with me directly and follow my coaching from there on those 3 steps. And to close out, I just want to thank you for watching all the way to this point. And if you want more information like this and you like these type of videos, please hit that like button and subscribe. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care, y'all.